Welcome to another episode of True Tales and Other Lies, and thanks so much for dropping in. It's great to have you here. The plan is that this episode will be more light-hearted than the last 3 episodes, and I'm hoping that this episode will make you smile, though I suspect for some of you it will just make you cringe, or some of it will. Today's episode has been inspired by Paul Kelly's classic song, Dumb Things. And this morning I did a random Spotify search for classic Australian songs, picked a playlist and just hit play. And of course, no classic Aussie playlist is complete without a few Paul Kelly songs, right? Anyway, so I was listening to Dumb Things and having a bit of a bop around while I did a few jobs this morning, and there were some lyrics that really hit me and instantly transported me back to my, what I like to call, Dumb Things era. And don't worry, I'm not going to sing the lyrics because no one needs to hear that. But here are the lyrics that really caught me. So, caught the fever, heard the tune, thought I loved her, hung my heart on the moon, started howling, made no sense, thought my friends would rush to my defence. And I get all your good advice, it doesn't stop me from going through these things twice. I see the knives out, I turn my back. I hear the train coming, I stay right on that track. In the middle of a dream. I threw my hat into the ring. I've done all the dumb things. I thought that I just had to sing. I've done all the dumb things. And I mean, Paul Kelly is the master storyteller, and I love how this song could very well be a feature track of the soundtrack of my life. Now, I'm going to start with a personal story, a true tale. So it's December 1985. I'm at Sydney Airport with an open return plane ticket in one hand and a glass of alcohol of something in the other hand. It's probably Jack Daniels and Coke, given that it was early 80s. I'm surrounded by family and friends who, as was the custom back in the 80s, had come to see me off on my first ever overseas adventure. And yes, some of you may remember when international travel was a really big deal, where we'd actually get dressed up to board the plane for the trip. Crazy, right? And all our friends and family would head to the airport, we'd meet at the bar, and they would see us off. Now, I was 24 and I was flying solo. I was heading off for a winter season in the Northern Hemisphere, but my true plan was that I was going to be staying indefinitely, which is why I had an open return ticket. Anyway, I was flying solo doing this thing, and my parents and some of my friends considered this to be a dumb thing. I'd even resigned from a very secure, permanent and reasonably well-paid job as a school teacher. Of course, my father, my boss, and my colleagues had made it abundantly clear that, especially because I was a young single female, this was a huge dumb thing. Now, my friends celebrated my adventurous spirit, but they also said things like, oh my God, I could never go overseas by myself. So anyway, here I was, waiting to board a plane, about to live out my childhood and young adult dream of living in the Swiss Alps. My favourite book as a kid was Heidi, so that's where all this stemmed from. Anyway, I wasn't actually going to be living in the Swiss Alps. I was going to be living in a traditional village / ski station in the French Alps called La Clusaz. Oh, and I couldn't speak any French, not a word. Well, I could say a few things. Voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir? But I didn't think that was going to come in too handy trying to get around France. Well, maybe you would have. Anyway, I digress. I had an open return ticket, and the only thing I had booked for this trip was a room in a chalet in La Clusaz. I would be share housing this chalet with 5 other people. People I'd never met and people I knew nothing about. I didn't have a job to go to. I was just going to use my savings and, see what happened. Dumb thing? Maybe. Anyway, keep in mind, it's 1984. There was no internet, no booking.com, no mobile phones, no GPS, no Google Maps, and fortunately for me, no social media. I hadn't booked any accommodation for the one night that I would be spending in Paris after this massive long-haul flight from Sydney. What did my family and colleagues and some of my friends think about my itinerary planning? Yep, you guessed it. They thought it was a really dumb thing. There's a Paul Kelly pattern going on here. I had done zero research into the exact location of La Clusaz. I did try looking in an atlas and on a globe of the world, and La Clusaz, little village. It's not on the map. All I knew was the general region I was going to. Now, all I had was a drinks coaster with scribbled directions about how to catch the TGV from Paris to Annecy and then catch a bus from Annecy to La Clusaz. Where did I get these directions, which had been scribbled on this particular coaster? In a pub at Perry-Chevalier. Where else? Here I was drinking with a group of La Clusaz skiers who I'd met on the slopes that day and spent the whole day with. And they had agreed to organise the room for me. We did mail each other before I got there, so we made the arrangement that they would pick me up from the La Clusaz bus stop when I'd made it to La Clusaz. Anyway, along with my plane ticket, this pub coaster with scribble on it was the extent of my travel itinerary documents. Did I use a travel agent? Well, only to book my plane ticket. And yes, many people were quite concerned about this fly by the seat of my pants approach to my first ever trip overseas by myself. Was it yet another dumb thing? Anyway, what happened after I boarded that plane and there was no turning back? When I threw my hat into the ring. Well, that's a longer true tale, which I may get to later in this episode. Before I divulge more of the alleged dumb things I've done, I wonder, what exactly are dumb things? What makes a thing dumb? What do you define as a dumb thing? For instance, is a dumb thing simply a failure, something that you've done and just failed at? Generally, failure is considered a bad thing, right? And success is what's considered as the holy grail. You're not brought up to think that failure is a good thing. But for me, failure is actually a gift. And for me, failure is essential to learning and growing and getting a new perspective on things and unlearning. Now, of course, if failure puts you or others at risk, then that is what I call an epic failure and not a dumb thing. An example of an epic failure would be drink driving. That's not a dumb thing, that's just bloody stupid. You should never do it. And epic failure is also when you don't learn from that failure or that dumb thing. I mean, if you just keep going back and doing the same dumb thing over and over and over again, then that's an epic failure. It's the way I see it. So yes, I've done some dumb things, and some of those dumb things have spiralled into epic failures. But anyway, let's have a look at the Jeopardy board of dumb thing categories. There are dumb relationship things, dumb financial things, dumb partying things circa 1980, 1990, for me anyway. Dumb parenting things, dumb fashion things. I think 1970s, dumb fashion things. dumb workplace things. And yes, I've done all of those dumb. And in the 1980s, I was the aficionado of dumb things. I pretty much tasted all of them. Now here's a story from the category dumb relationship things. And I'm going to take you back to the 80s. Shoulder pads were big, hair was bigger, the best live music in pubs, cheap rent, disposable income, themed house parties that went all weekend, fingerless lace gloves, so classy, guys with perms, thin ties and parachute pants, even more classy. And yeah, the makeup was wild, but boy, was it fun. I was surrounded by dumb but bloody fun, fantastic fashion. The one thing that definitely was not dumb in the 80s was the music. The 80s, hands down, best decade for music. Now, in the 1980s, true disclosure, true story, true tale. If I wasn't making at least one completely misguided romantic decision per year, I wasn't even trying. Back then, love at first sight wasn't just a rom-com trope or a Shakespearean play. For me, it was the plan. Oh my God, I was so dumb. Now, I'm going to tell you a true tale about a friend I had, a really great friend, and let's call her Dummy McDumdum, or D-Girl for short. Now, D-Girl was a repeat offender when it came to dumb relationship things. Let me tell you the story. It's 1983. D-Girl meets a guy. Let's call him Guy A through Z. He's a composite character, if you will. D-Girl meets Guy A through Z at a work function and they spend the day roaming around this event together. This guy is damn hot. He's really funny. He's quite affectionate. He's a successful businessman and he's even a singer-songwriter. I mean, really? I could tell you his nationality, but I think I should protect the innocent. Now, D-Girl lives in Sydney. Guy A through Z lives in Texas. Yes, Texas. Oh, shit. I let it slip. I wasn't going to tell you his nationality. Anyway, doesn't matter. Now, let's call Guy A through Z, let's call him Mr. Texas now. And no, it wasn't Matthew McConaughey, though Mr. Texas apparently had what D-Girl described as the come-to-bed cowboy drawl. After 6 hours together at this work function, D-Girl goes into her typical dumb relationship thing, and she convinces herself that this guy is the one, her one true love, that elusive love at first sight romance to end all romances. Now, after the day at that function, D-Girl then fully commits to dinner and drinks and heads back to Mr. Texas's hotel. The next day is a Sunday and D-Girl and Mr. Texas spend the day together. They explore all the non-touristy sites of Sydney and they explore something else all night back at the hotel. And anyway, now it's Monday morning. It's time to go to work, right? D-Girl, with zero regrets, rings in a week-long sickie so that she can nurture this one true love. And yeah, well, no, work isn't happy and D-Girl is called into the boss's office for the, that we need to talk chat when she does finally return to work. She nearly lost the job, so yeah, dumb thing. Anyway, now let's get back to that week-long sickie. D-Girl maxes out her already maxed out credit card to pay for new clothes, for venues, for food, for drinks, for trinkets, I don't know, concert tickets, to fund this newfound romance with this amazing Texan guy that she's fallen madly in love with. And she believes he's madly in love with her too. Now this week ends in a haze of excess and exercise, and it's time for Mr. Texas to go back home. D-Girl drives Mr. Texas to the airport. D-Girl says tearful goodbyes at the airport bar. Mr. Texas flies off into the sunset without D-Girl. Of course, after that, D-Girl immediately launches herself into a self-scripted melodrama of absence makes the heart grow fonder. And she starts planning how she's going to relocate to Texas and live out her happily ever after with this guy she's known for a week. Let's skip forward 1 week. 1 week after Mr. Texas gets back home, D-Girl receives a postcard from him. He sent it from the airport. It was a Sydney postcard, but she gets it a week later. Mr. Texas informs D-Girl that he has a long-term girlfriend back home in Texas and he won't be contacting her again. Now, does D-Girl think, holy shit, I dodged a bullet with this one? Does she chalk it up as a dumb thing and move on? No, not a chance. D-Girl does not realise that Mr. Texas is a total dick for cheating on his girlfriend, for one. Does D-Girl embrace the fact that Mr. Texas is nothing but an untrustworthy douchebag or sleazebag, whatever you want to call him? No, of course not. D-Girl is in the height of her dumb relationship things era. No, D-Girl simply convinces herself that, and this is crazy, Mr. Texas is trapped in this long-term relationship, that he's really in love with her, and she'll be the one who will set him free from this long-term doomed relationship. Oh, D-Girl, she pines, she burns, she perishes. Oh, she writes long, embarrassing letters to him. She never gets a reply. D-Girl spends more time pining for this guy than she actually spent with him. She spends even more time paying off a credit card. Now, fortunately for D-Girl, the 90s saw the end of her dumb relationships thing era. Now, she tells some bloody hilarious stories when we're getting on the wines. And does D-Girl regret any of her 80s epic failures? Not even for a minute. Of course, now she has those, oh my God, what was I thinking moments. But she claims, she swears that she has no regrets because she had way too much fun for regrets. I think she forgets all the pining that she did and all the wallowing. Anyway, but here's the thing. Don't our I've done all the dumb things make the best stories? Aren't they the stories that make us laugh the most? And I mean, if you've never done some dumb things, how would you know what not to do? So if you're listening to this and you'll realise, and I hope you're still listening to this. I have been banging on for a while here. But if you're realising you've done some of the dumb things, well, congratulations. You're living or you've lived. And if you see that dumb things train coming down the track, and if you've been on those tracks before and you've seen that train before, maybe this time step off those tracks. Or at least if you don't step off those tracks, you have to tell me all about it later. Okay, now let me go back to my first story. Do you want to hear how my epic journey from Sydney Airport to La Clusaz worked out for me? Do you want to hear about my first night in Paris and the subsequent train ride to Annecy the next day? Maybe you'd like to hear about the bus ride from Annecy to La Clusaz, which was the last bus on that particular bus route. Do you want to hear what actually happened when I arrived at that bus stop in La Clusaz? That solitary bus stop on the outskirts of La Clusaz in the French Alps? Maybe you'd like to hear what happened when I found myself at this bus stop, completely alone, in the dark, in the middle of a blizzard. No one came to meet me to take me to the chalet. That's actually a story for another episode of True Tales and Other Lies, which I'm more than happy to share. And if that's an episode that you would want to listen to, then write me a message in the comments and I'll get on it. If you want to share some of your best dumb thing stories, then get in touch. I promise I won't judge. I may, however, ask for your permission to share your story, your dumb thing story, as part of the fun of True Tales and Other Lies.